Hello there, my name is Charles Stanley and I'm one of the technologists with AnimalScan. Go with me on a little journey here and let's talk about a couple of things that we need to do each day when we're preparing for scans. So imagine, if you would, that you're taking a trip to your favorite travel destination, and luckily for you, you've been upgraded to first class. You're seated in row 1 of the airplane, but you notice something funny. You look around, you don't see the captain, you don't see any of the flight crew, but you're on this massive piece of equipment getting ready to go on a journey. At the last minute, the captain runs in, sits in the chair, straps in his seat, and says, "Let's take off." How do you feel about that? Has he checked the plane out? Do we think we're okay? Has he wiggled the flaps? Has he checked the gas gauge? Has he made sure that this dangerous piece of equipment is ready to be used for its intended purpose? Okay, if you get the fear of that, then you get the fear that we would like for you to have in starting your day with running a scanner. It's called a healthy fear. The fear is that things aren't going to work correctly at the worst possible time. So how do we prepare to make sure that we don't wind up in a situation such as that? Well, the first thing that we should do when coming in the morning is we should, before we even cut the scanner on, we should listen to make sure that we hear this chirping sound. This chirping sound is the helium recirculating in the magnet. This is literally the heartbeat of the magnet. If you don't hear chirping, then just like with a patient, if you didn't hear a heartbeat, you go into a whole different mode, okay? And that mode is we have to figure out why it's not recirculating. Usually the first thing is to immediately repower everything, okay? And also to place a service call. The second thing that you should do if it's not chirping is check your helium levels. The purpose of this chirping is to continuously recirculate the helium in the unit to ensure proper cooling. If it's not recirculating, the helium is boiling off, which could result in a very dangerous situation. Remember the gas gauge on the airplane? We need to make sure the gas gauge on our scanner is correct as well. Okay, so number one, we're going to listen for chirping. The next thing we would want to do is, before we bring a patient in this room, we want to make sure that the scanner is operational in the way that it should be. The easiest and best way to do that is to run a phantom scan. Okay, so a phantom, depending upon the type of scanner you're on, could come in all kinds of shapes and sizes, but it's going to be looks like a hard plastic device that's filled with a particular fluid, and it's used to calibrate and check the scanner to ensure that it's running the sequences properly. And so yours may look like this, it may look differently, but the main thing is to take that phantom and place it in a coil, and then proceed with positioning this into the middle of the magnet and taking scans. The reason that we want to do this is, going back to our plane analogy, we want to make sure that somebody has checked that plane out and that it's operational. You don't want to be the first person to fly on that plane when it hasn't been checked out. Neither does any of these patients want to be the first patient on this table until it's been checked out. So next step is we take our phantom, we center it into the magnet. Again, depending upon what scanner you use, this thing may look a little differently, but ultimately at the end of the day, they're all going to be the same, right? Is that they have a center part, you have a phantom, you put it in the proper position. Then once we've done that, I don't know why. Once we've done that, we'll proceed with the next step. The next thing that we would want to do is, when we sit at our scanner, again, depending upon the type of scanner you use, You will have a place in here that's going to have error logs, okay? It may be located in Service Desktop Manager, it may be located in another place on your scanner, but you should be well aware of where the error logs are on your scanner, and before you start scanning, you would want to make sure that none of those error logs has given you messaging indicating that there's a problem with the system. So A, assuming that we have chirping, B, assuming that we have no error logs, we're now ready to scan, okay? So you may ask, well, what should I scan? How should I scan? What should I do to ensure proper running of the scanner? It doesn't have to be like in human medicine, American College of Radiology level scanning. There's nothing wrong with doing that. If your site does that level of daily QA, that's fine, but it's not needed for what we're doing. What is needed though is to make sure it will run the sequences that you use in your everyday practice. So what I suggest to most people is either with the spine coil or with the head coil, put a phantom in there, run the localizer out of your regular protocol for one of those exams, use that localizer to build a very basic T1 and T2 sequence. If you do those types of scans prior to bringing a patient in the room, you are 90+% ensured that whatever you want to run will in fact run, okay? And so that should be the next thing that you do. So again, as a reminder, make sure that the thing has a heartbeat, that it's chirping, okay? Make sure that you haven't been given any warning signs. Position your phantom, run the phantom scan, and then look at it. If you look here, you can see that on this particular thing, we have done exactly that. Before we scanned our first patients, I did a scan patient called Test Tube, as a matter of fact, and I generated an image. This is how you should start your day, okay? Again, the main reasons is if you think about you and what you would like to have to ensure your safety when you're flying, that's the same type of attitude that we would want for every one of our patients when they come on this unit. And so what we would want to do is we would want to make sure that we've done everything to ensure their safety. And that requires us to make sure that the equipment is available and ready for use prior to bringing them on the truck, okay? So then the next thing would be is that we would also want to ensure for the patient that the anesthesia part is taken care of. Depending upon where you're at, that may be your responsibility or it may be the responsibility of others. But the same holds true as well. If we need to check our O2 tanks and make sure we have adequate oxygen supply, if we need to check our emergency drug box and make sure that we have emergency drugs in case those were needed, we also need to make sure that we have connectivity. We need to make sure that we can send images to the physician. We need to make sure that we can reach them by phone, be it wall phone or cell phone. We need to make sure that we've established those points of communication. Once we've done all of those things, once we've made sure that the scanner has a heartbeat, once we've made sure that it's capable of making the images that are used in our scans, not some QA test that the field engineer does, but our scans, the type of scans that we do. Once we've made sure those things are in place, once we've made sure that the anesthesia equipment is in place and ready for use, then finally we're ready to proceed with bringing a patient in here. Okay, why would we want to do those things? What are the bad things that would happen if we couldn't? Well, imagine that the wrong time to be looking for a different coil, the wrong time to be solving an error log, the wrong time to be chasing a pressure leak is when the patient is under anesthesia. When the patient is under anesthesia, we have one goal: to do professional, complete images in as quick and as safely as we can and allow that patient to return out of the scan room and be brought up out of anesthesia. So with that, I thank you and I look forward to talking to you again soon in the future.